Welcome to this new roundtable. We are going to talk about new technologies for territorial development in emerging and traditional sectors. We have as a framework the territory as a basis for social, economic, and environmental innovation, different innovative strategies for a post-pandemic time toward inclusive and resilient collaborative times. If you allow me to introduce myself, my name is Gustavo Kinselman. I have a BA in Administration and Systems. I'm very passionate about technology, different startups, and international cooperation. And since December 2015, I am the coordinator of the thematic unit in the municipality of La Plata, which is the fourth biggest city in Argentina. It's very famous for its cathedral, and it's the city where Globant, a company for technology, was born in cooperation with North American funds. So we are also working in the thematic unit of science and technology of Mercociudades. So I want to formally thank you to Mercociudades for the invitation, to FAMSI, to UCLG, and the organizers of these events for giving us this opportunity and space. I will tell you very briefly about how we will carry on with these sessions. We have an hour and a half to do this roundtable, and after my introduction, we will proceed with the first block for the four speakers that are taking part of this roundtable today. Each of you will have 10 minutes. After, we will open the space for sort of 15 minutes. So each of the participants can again have an intervention of 6 minutes. And we will close with a very brief synthesis of everything was spoken about and the different thematics. Just to make a brief commentary, we were saying that innovation and new technologies facilitate the development of innovative consumption models, and they help in sustainable development. In a context in which the triangular coordination of technology can be perfective, and we can use its power in order to perfect the access to knowledge and different tools for social innovation, also economic and environmental innovation. We understand that local governments and cities are acquiring a new protagonism, and it's in the cities where people work, educate, transport, etc. It's exactly where we need to bring answers to the challenges the state faces. In this current pandemic, we feel that these governments have been challenged to change their priorities for development, and I understand from a personal point of view that this is a very good opportunity to improve processes and to improve different issues as regards environmental problems, energy transition, going towards neutral carbon footprints, improving circular economy, and so on. So we think that now the economy can create new conditions for territories to face better these challenges. I took the chance to create this question as a trigger point. So, having into account your experience, how do you think that the application of knowledge and new technologies can contribute to promote sustainable development, and better economies. What role can have new technologies in recovery? What are the key aspects for recovery in this context? So I will give the floor to the first speaker in this roundtable. Her name is Leire Madariaga. Is the Director of Digital Transformation Entrepreneurship of the Basque Government. She had previously held the position of Director of Foreign Relations. She has a degree in Economic and Business Administration from the Commercial University of Dubai in Belgium. Much of her experience is related and focused in international cooperation, mainly in service provision. She also has deep knowledge in different commercial policy instruments and international organisms. She's taking part very often in different forums, and she was also the Deputy General Director of SPRI, the Basque Country Development Agency. So Larry, whenever you're ready, the floor is all yours.
El micrófono apagado.
Your mic is off, Leira. I apologize. Thank you very much. We can hear you very well. Thank you, Gustavo, for your introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers of the DEL Forum. It's not the first that I participate in this type of forum, but unfortunately today, all of us have to be connected in this way instead of being in person. And of course, I would like to thank Cordoba, Argentina, for this invitation, and hopefully soon we can get together. I don't know whether in Cordoba or maybe in the next place. In the first 10 minutes, I wanted to let me first of all share my screen before answering the challenging questions that Gustavo asked us. I want to take advantage of the 10 introduction minutes to explain how we are facing this passionate digital transformation challenge, as Gustavo also said, and we are going to refer during the session about it has its implications as regards the economical development of the territories. I cannot go to the next slide. This is a problem for live streaming. You don't see the second slide, right? No. We only see the first slide.
Sí, Leire, ahora sí vemos. Ahora vemos la segunda con la...
Now we see the second slide. Perfect. Some data from the Basque Country in Euskadi is an autonomous place in the north of Spain. There you have a lot of data. I wanted to highlight that we are a small territory of 2 million, approximately million people. We are a very industrial place. Our GDP comes from industry, and we also understood that a big part of the competitiveness in our industry bet for technology. And you can see the network agents and university, A+D is applied for 6+D. And I wanted to talk about the data from the technology and electrician sector. This approach towards technology in which you see we have an invoice of 5,353 million euros in this sector. We are a cluster technology. We have 135 million of investment and more than 20,000 employments. Just to give you an idea on where we are in the digitalization index in the European area, in the last data corresponding to the 2020, we are in the 7th place as regards the European Union, 28. So we are a 65 percentage, and as regards connectivity or human capital, we are very well positioned. In the internet usage by the citizenships, we are delayed below the European average. I think that due to COVID, we are going to improve. So you can see that we have something to be improved. And in the digital transformation in other countries, we see the importance of the digital information in the public administration. We must focus on this. This is an example because we believe that in base of the user experience and the efficiency and effectiveness, and through the innovation, leadership, and collaboration private-public, we must transmute the digital technology to the citizenship and also for the companies and for the whole territory. So our strategy that I'm going to refer to very briefly, we have a very, let's say, it was approved a short time ago. It has 3 dimensions representing the elements that we are going to focus on. One is the technology. It's what everybody is talking about, the 5G, the artificial intelligence, through a lot of enablers that are the channels through which we can get to the different types of application environments, from the industry, the SMEs, justice, education, the environment. Perhaps this image expresses it better. This technology, they are enablers for learning, the innovation. We have a lot of action lines in which we want to impact the security, financing, language industry, welfare, the environment sectors, in all the sectors. So this is the objective that we have complied with, one strategic objective that is to accelerate the technology and to take advantage of the potential, the enablers, also to contribute to the transition. And in the Basque country, we saw the major environmental electricity and the social health sector, not because we are in a post-pandemic sector, is less important for us. And the 4 factors we want to act on, we have the action lines. I'm not going to read what each of them says, but to sum up, the first factor is the singular initiative is collaborating inside the institution, collaborating all the actors, all the agent, public actors, and also the private actors must collaborate and work together, and then to promote and to have an integrated ecosystem, to cooperate within the actors, to provide networking skills and international positioning. And then the digital competence, digital skills. I think technology goes faster than what citizens and organizations and companies and governments can absorb. We are inspired also of the importance of the digital transformation. We were defined as one of the 5 vectors in the digital area, and especially the importance of talent, to retain and attract talent and to generate talent, which is one of the future keys. And lastly, as a government, we have to facilitate that companies can put in place their projects through types of supports, especially directed to the SMEs, because there is a lot of inequality. It's not the same the way in which process is addressed by a big company that has a lot of resources or has more resources than an SME. To support the SME is also one of our priorities. These are the indicators of this strategy. There are a few. We didn't want to give a document with a lot of information, but we centered in the impact factors. So you will see that the indicators sometimes they are international or national. They are not our own collaboration ones. And lastly, to talk about the funding, I represent, as Gustavo said, I work in the development and economical department, and from that department, we talk about the digital transformation with the funding for the next 5 years for more than 100 million of euros. The impact generation, the technologies impact, it's included in all our funds for the rest of the government areas, from education, environment, governance, internal governance, administration in the public, or in this case, in the Basque government. We have our own politics. For example, the policy digitalization is very important. And we also identified this big amount of money that is allowed in our public funds and devoted for the next 5 years. And we want to provide this or to use it in technology. Of course, I can share this information to all of you if you want to. But again, the technological and the channels and the enablers through a strategic plan should impact in these 14 application environments. Each one is different from tourism, education, and each one with its own particularities as regards inequality. I stop here in this first intervention just to contextualize the way we are addressing the digital transformation in the Basque country. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leire. Thank you for sharing these first ideas and insights. Very interesting. Most of the topics you have addressed. So let's see how this is developed. In the following ideas that are going to be shared by our colleagues. Now, let me introduce the next speaker, Marcelo Facina. He's a senior executive in smart cities and digital municipalities at the Andean Development Corporation, CAF. He's graduated in political science from the University of Brasilia with master's degree in development studies from the University of Rotterdam and public policy from the Central European University. He works in the frontier between technology, urban development, and governance for more than 10 years, having experience in technical cooperation and funding in countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Paraguay, among others. So it's very interesting where Marcelo has been traveling in and working in. If you're ready, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Gustavo. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers. I'm really thankful because it's a big event with many days, a lot of participation, and I also greet the rest of the panel members. Yes, I am here as a main, I work for CAF, which is a multilateral bank with presence in 19 countries in the region and also in Portugal and Spain. Currently, I am working in several digital transformation projects. We also have an approach in the national level like Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, but also some punctual initiatives in other parts of the world. And Gustavo, I don't have a presentation. I simply want to talk about some insights related to the question made at the beginning, and also I will tell you a little bit about the work and the challenges we identified during those activities. I want to highlight that we are in a very adequate context for our development digital technologies. We have been grown exponentially, and we have a lot of digital tools available to be used during that context. It's a progressive movement, so it has not stopped, especially in the urban areas. This is not new. It is already known phenomena, but to this we have the pandemic added and the necessity that this gave to the use of data and also digitalization of a series of activities that we carry on. We can understand the pandemics in a positive way as a catalyzer of change. And the use of technology and data today is relevant. Besides, it is like a test for the following years and decades. The climate change and the effects are examples that we have that are going also towards that direction. I think that technology is a tool that has different ways in the space. It is present in a lot of social spheres, whether no matter what age, gender, race, whatever. We have to think about the types of groups that use these technologies and how they interact with it. And this means that we are all generating data, whether with using our mobile phones. We have also data in the web pages we use or the public devices, or if we have been working the data that we use. And this is the beginning of the effective use of data, and we have to improve people's lives. This is part of our mission, to provide citizens a better use of the data that is already being generated, whether they do something or not. And the new technologies can contribute to the equitable and sustainable development in three different ways. It improved the understanding of the problem. Two, provide support to the use of the data to the actors so it can be used effectively and faster. And three, creating the space so that they interact positively, providing innovative solutions according to the public necessities. As regards understanding better the problem, we have three alternatives. One, we have a big capacity to reflect on the data, whether it is using sensors, radars, weather stations. We recollect data as well as services, economical indicators, social indicators. We also have the capacity with this technology to organize data in a more effective way through the use of the cloud technology, through the standardization of the and publication of those data through open standards. And we also use technology, and it allows to contribute to the sustainable development since the participation cost is diminished through the use of technology. For example, participation from the citizen platforms, or also in the digital platforms that we have at our disposal every day, like the social media, for example. Talking about the support to the actors in the use of the data use in a more effective way, which is a contribution to the technology as well. Technology can facilitate the usage of the reading of that data, those data, through the several tools. For example, the cams that have this technology to read objects, for example, counting people. For example, the privacy is also involved in this. And also the automation of very long documents, reading, for example, language automation. And I would say that creating the space for positive interaction of the territorial actor is key to arrive to this advancement, that is, passing from the data, the technology existence, to its use and effective change in people's lives. For example, we later mentioned as regards the creation and collaboration of the public-private is in the center of that transformational process. And reflecting on what are the critical or parts to making sure of the use of technology to contribute the activation of economy, I think the government role is essential. And it's very important that the government has a clear vision and very well-structured equipment. And I think Larry, she mentioned it before in the Basque Country, and I think it's very important also in Latin America. In some cities have their satellite transformational system, but sometimes those plans are not as fast as they are needed, and then some places don't have enough equipment to generate this. So it's necessary also to have the governance structures well constituted so that they can face those strategies. And then public counselors to understand the complexity of this agenda, and so they can do all the adaptations. So that is to have a strategic vision. So it means that we don't have to follow each thing the way it is. So we have to measure the impact indicators as well. Another critical aspect that is important to mention is that we have to construct territories and institutions that are connected, and they can be adapted to not only in the territory, but also in other parts. It's important to have people that can listen to the citizens, and they can incorporate the citizens' expectations to the public politics. It's also important that those cities and territories, those local governments, those local ecosystems are connected to the good examples arisen through the digital transformation in other parts of the world. And that is the importance of participating in big national, international debates. And again, I think this space offered by the forum is important, especially for this interaction. And I also agree with Gustavo about what he said in his initial intervention. There is a very important role of the international cooperation in that process, and also from banks like CAF. CAF works as an agent that connects good ideas and good practices through the elaboration of product reports. And we also have a very extensive list of the documents and knowledge produced for that topic related to the GovTech agenda or strategic use of data and other topics, and also to organize and participate in those debate forums that allow the knowledge of these good practices. And something more related to the ADN for this, which is a financial agent that allows the support for the deployment of bigger projects in digital transformation, like connectivity structures, and they also understand the knowledge it generates, that it's important to have the construction of data infrastructures through their servers, the hardware that is needed, and also the software and the processes that have an adequate impact within that agenda. And of course, the designs of digital services is something that it can also be financed in their operations. CAF also, and any development banks, they support innovative pilots. They work in anything that is with the knowledge frontier development to support the creation of the good practices that we are really interested in developing as well. And to finish, just to mention a third critical aspect that is necessary to be mentioned as regards the technology usage in the local economic development is to have clear objectives to put into practice. That is the public purchase for innovation. Because even though there are several initiatives in the region that are very interesting, that originate from the labs, not only in Latin America, but also in the world, we still have a reality that death by the pilot is what is said in English. They are very innovative pilots, but they don't generate a concrete impact in all the extension of the territory because they don't have enough capacity to be escalated. The escalation of these solutions depend on the public parties of innovation that are well aligned specifically to the legislation. And then we have another important topic to the bodies that do the work, which is legitimate, in topics that have to do with the accountability you need to have and the government must have. In this region, we have very interesting examples. In Brazil, we have coordination work with the law that has an innovation technology lab to design the public parties for innovation. And we will start also work with Bogota to support a public parties for the innovation of all the districts. For example, how to buy and also to escalate for solutions. I stop here. I gave space to my colleagues to contribute with more insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcelo. It was super interesting. And we will know that CAF is actually a great knowledge reservoir and of also best practices to be followed. So thank you very much for your words. And now I'm going to give the floor to the next speaker, Ivan Emeren. He's the head of the public technology section of the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And he is the head of the Amsterdam Public Technology Program with the aim of making new technology available and also studying their impact in local economies and how they can also aid in local economic development. They have carried out many innovative projects between governmental organizations and actors, as well as other private ones, such as also the startup of the artificial intelligence in Amsterdam. He's also very active in the environment of digital rights. So, Ike, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind introduction. Thank you for having me here. I'm sharing some slides now because I think it helps to read some things in your own language, although my Spanish is pretty terrible. So I tried to help our translators to use some Google Translate. I'm here because of the work I do at the City of Amsterdam, but also the work I do for the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. And that's a worldwide network of cities who I think aim to perceive what Marcelo, but also Lyra, the previous speakers addressed as urgent topics we need to face. I'll share some insights. The main goal, I'll share two topics within these 10 minutes. One is the goal and the ambition of the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. And the second one is a thinking framework we use at the City of Amsterdam. What COVID learned is that digital rights are not granted for everyone. Even in Amsterdam, where you can expect that a digital environment is safe for everyone, it's not true. A lot of people didn't appear to not have access to internet, or fake news spreading around pretty rapidly. So it's in every city worldwide. I think these are the challenges we need to address. We can do it alone, but I think it's important to stick together as cities because we know this first. Today, at least in the Netherlands, we're a bit slow, but how do we deal with fake news around COVID? An example. Those are the challenges we need to face. But it's the same when we talk about sustainability or regional development, all kind of issues. How do we make sure that we trust academics on their knowledge, or how do we make sure that people's voices are being heard in a proper way? Can we use technology to get insights? Well, that's where cities have a few roles, and one of that is being a voice of citizens, making sure that we address, well, I think UCLG is a very important partner for the Cities of Coalition for Digital Rights, because it's not an issue for some countries in some area of the world, it's a worldwide issue. And I think in cities, we know this first, but we should tackle it together. And I think this is one of the fora which is important. It's an outdated slide, but it's a worldwide coalition, but still developing. It's a young coalition, so please get involved if you like to address. What is it about, and what is the voice I think should be heard? One is, I think digital rights are the bottom line. It's not about innovation, it's about what are the basics, and that's about access to internet. It's about digital literacy, making sure that you're able to get access. It's about making sure that people don't earn money on the data you create using, well, digital life. It's a lot of words, but in a sense, it's about, can normal people like us or anyone else, can you trust technology around you? I think that's it. You've got access. Can you understand what's about, and can you participate? And I'll give you some examples. One is a lot of words on a slide because I tried to translate some stuff. But bottom line is, in Amsterdam, it's pretty new. Only since a few years, we've got a deputy mayor active on a digital city. And a lot of people do know examples like Toronto, where Google tried to well, create a neighborhood from a company perspective. We're trying to do the opposite, but we don't really know how. So we made it political. So we made sure that not only civil servants who try to, okay, well, digitization is really important, and let's work about it, but make sure that it's something that our mayor concerns as well. And we created this story. We enlarged it by showing what's actually happening. A lot of people are talking about what's not fair about AI. Well, we created a lot of examples showing, okay, well, this is wrong in public space, or this is how many people are queuing up for food tickets in your city. Some details that not translate this one, but during COVID, a lot of things expanded pretty rapidly. A lot of shop owners made sure that they grew from their SME perspective to a more large company, knowing, okay, I'm not able to, by one instance, create a logistic department. So a lot of small book owners, bookstores, well, were on the verge of collapsing. Local supermarkets weren't capable of not only towards Amazon, but also local national online stores. And that showed that in only a few months that shopping streets became less crowded. Stores are, well, we're being forced to shut down. So it really showed that the role of a government, at least in the Netherlands, enlarges, and we should also make sure that we facilitate a digital infrastructure for small companies, individuals, supporting alternative technology. And it's something we haven't done before. And it's also something we created rules around that we weren't allowed to. We're not allowed to buy a data marketplace and give it to small companies. We're not allowed to do so, but we do try to do so because we're not allowed to give people free internet access, but because we asked the market, we asked companies to solve that problem. So if we do it by now, we're not allowed to do so. What we should, because if we don't, people don't have equal access to internet. And the COVID really helps, not only in Amsterdam, but cities worldwide to notice, okay, we should take the lead to make sure that a digital world is not only a digital world, but it affects how we design public spaces. One thing I'd really like to, if you remember one thing of these 10 minutes, is that we should rethink our design principles, and we should not only lay back and wait for large companies to design the task we used to do as a government, and we gave it to large companies. More on this later. One example, before we're talking a lot about new technology and data, please be aware that it's only one perspective of reality. We asked a lot of people in a neighborhood, please tell us who's doing what, what's important, and we matched it with the data we have. It's a different image. I always like to show this slide because please be aware that the more we talk about digitization, please be aware that humans should be in control. And if you ask all the data, you get a different image of a neighborhood instead of, etc. And this is, of course, a pity when the slide you want to show is not leading, but now it works. For the last few minutes, I'd like to share, and I think it's visible, although it's not large enough. It's not only about digitization, it's about how we create new insights, new visions to approach how to develop rural areas or local governments, local economy. And if you haven't read it, I know the introduction of this session introduced a lot of insights, the orange model, all kind of models you can think of. There's one from Kate Rayward, and she designed, well, we're always looking from an economic perspective, or we're looking from a digital perspective, or we're looking for all kind of perspective from housing or gender. Everyone is in their own corner. Putting this together into a more comprehensive approach on what's important and how do you weigh all these different factors, I think it's really important. We definitely don't have the answer, but we try to apply it to a city level, a local level, where we think, okay, how do we know as the Netherlands, we use more land than we need to. So how do we compensate it in a different way if we can't? Well, this is a model where we, circularity, circular economy has been already introduced, I think, by Lyra. How do we translate those words into a concrete strategy where we reuse products, or we think about the footprint our computers make, or the data centers we have, or etc. The main point that I'd like to make from these 2-3 pictures are how do we put it into perspective? So I think the importance of digital rights are, I think we should take back control as cities, as local governments, to make sure that people have access, people have rights. The second one is we don't have to wait, or we don't have to procure everything. We can take the lead on something, some topics. And from my profession, it's about a digital infrastructure, the cables, the hardware, etc. But from your perspective, from everyone in this session, it's not only about technology, it's about including this in circularity. It's economic matters you have to weigh in. And that's where the model of Kate Rayward is very impressive on how to weigh all these instances. I think these are the few remarks I'd like to make during this introduction. Over to you, Gustavo.
Gracias, Ike.
Thank you, Ike. Very interesting, the projects that you are carrying out in your place. We have to think about technology and match it to the government processes. It's a big challenge. We are going to give the floor to the fourth speaker from the round table, from this first block. I would like to introduce you to Juan Francisco Delgado Morales. He's an Executive Vice President of the European Innovation Foundation, INTEC, and Senator of the UN of the World Business Angels Investment Forum for the G20 for inclusion. He's also Digital Intelligence founder. He is a psychologist. He's a user of TICs and social innovation and new citizenship. He has also been a director for the Andalusia University. He was chosen as reelected as the board for the telework from Europe. He's also been a member of the European Council, and he's expert at the European Council. We have also entrepreneur for Silicon Valley and professor for the Master of Accessibility and Smart Cities. Juan Francisco, can you listen to me? It's your turn. When you wish to speak, you can do it. Hello. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I couldn't find the microphone. Thank you, Gustavo, for the introduction. And thank you also to Lede and to Ike and Marcelo for your intervention, because I think it gives us a different panorama for each topic. I would like to thank Paula as well, that she was there helping me, that everything worked, and Fancy, because she invited me and gave me the opportunity to participate in this forum. As Leire said before, she had the opportunity to participate in other opportunities, fortunately in person. And in Spain, we are starting, for example, I have just arrived from an event in person. So after a lot of time, a lot of virtual events, so it was a massive event. And that is a good symptom that things are working for humanity. So the vaccinations are working. And the countries in which the vaccination, as in Spain, is the case in Spain, is advancing progressively. I think it will rise very soon to the rest of the world, so that we can start with this normality circumstances. So thank you again for inviting me and for being here. It's a pleasure, even though it's being done virtually. It's a pleasure to collaborate with you in this important event. Gustavo, you said at the beginning, you asked a question that I try to answer very quickly. I will try to answer. I'm not going to talk about my book. I will try to answer what you asked. What is the technology role in the sustainable development? First of all, we must think what is the sustainable development, because perhaps not all of us understand it in the same way. Because given the circumstances given by the pandemic, the sustainable development has also to do with redimensioning economically many things that before the pandemic were in a certain way and now surely are in a different way. For example, the digital transformation development in the world, we know that we have made some advances practically in 6 months, what we would have advanced maybe in a normal moment, among inverted commas, the normal part, in 10 years. So we had advanced in all the fields in a huge way. So we had advanced so much that we think that the best is to have what I have said before, direct and physical and personal interactions, because we are oversaturated with, for example, in messages and SMS and mails to revise them each day. Apart from the responsibility, at least this happens to me. I don't have enough time to cope up with the amount of messages I receive. If we do some statistics globally, I don't know if this is globally, but I think most of us are really overloaded with emails and messages, because we have practically digitalized all the social relationships, labor relationships, economic relationships, and interpersonal relationships. And this generates overload. But coming back to the question that you asked, I think there are three main topics to bear in mind that have to do with the technology usage for the sustainable development. If we think that there is a consensus idea of what it is. One, very important, to foster transparency. That is, what for you is a reduction carbon footprint that can be measured in Brazil or in Amsterdam or in London. That is to say, that transparency can be given and provided by digital technology that supports the measurement, for example, of the diminution of the carbon. And that is a good symptom, that is to say, the transparency. It's important in the fact that this can be shared the way we are doing it right now. I listen to myself with an echo. I don't know whether someone has a mic open, and I have an echo of what I'm saying. I can listen to myself. I have better sound. So transparency and being able to share. It's important to share information because by that we learn. Sharing, we are able to change many of the things that we have done. And sharing, we are also able to arrive to people that probably did not have the possibility of learning, so that some of the things that are already being done can be changed. For example, when we are sharing plans, we are sharing as well ways of doing things. We heard it from Leire, from Marcelo, and IAC. Those are plans that we are sharing so that other people can use it with good practices. If we didn't do it with digital technology, it would have been very difficult. Of course, we also have to do this with transparency. Then afterwards, later, Marcelo and I must share the indicators that make possible that the rest of the people can aim at arriving to those objectives using the politics that they are showing. And then the most interesting part that is substantially different in the times we are going through, which is the generation of processes, the agile of processes. That it's not only a concept. It's not only a concept. It's with the artificial intelligence, the arrival of it, and the quantic programming is changing completely. Not everything, but it's changing very in an agile way. And the changes that could have been done with the COVID situation, they could be simple tools as the ones that we are currently using in this video conference. The changes with artificial intelligence can multiply by 100, 200, 3,000 in an exponential way. Why? Because the systems learn, they storage data, they process data, and they go beyond the evolution of the social and community evolution is generating. That is why I think that each time I'm taking advantage that most of you are from the public administration, I want to say this, and I have been there for 30 years as well, and I am a public officer. I know what I'm talking about, and I know it very well. I had many different roles from the low to the top. There is a gap between what is said and done. And with artificial intelligence and the role that the administration plays currently, we run the risk of making a bigger difference between the society reality and the public politics. So there is a bigger gap between them. I think that the public administration doesn't have to do development politics or innovation politics. They have to do internal politics, innovation politics, which is more than enough. They have to center in providing services that are with qualities, public services connected to health and especially to education, especially nowadays where artificial intelligence is invading our lives and we don't even realize it about it. the public education in this, to socialize the aspects that the artificial intelligence is placing in our lives, because we don't know that in our lives we have artificial intelligence and it is acting in a natural way that we don't even realize about it. But what we are talking about here is being analyzed in Turing and artificial intelligence equipment that they know it's being, what we are talking here is being analyzed by that, and the system is interpreting what is going to be talked about by our own conversations in the future. We may be scared, it could be some fantasy for some. It is a reality, it's an absolute reality. Facing this type of reality and looking at the current situation, according to the OECD, the employments that are going to be lost in the 8 years, only 8 years, are 76 million of employments that are repetitive tasks, many of them in public administration. But on the contrary, we say that 133 million of employments are going to be generated that are not connected to the 77 millions that are lost, because the 77 millions are repetitive, because in administration, to do something, the task did not provide anything to society. The artificial intelligence does it automatically. We don't need people to be doing those tasks. So education is fundamental for this, to create new challenges, new opportunities for younger people so that they can learn what their future is going to be like. As regards the artificial intelligence, some people may think that we have left behind the ethical and philosophical problems of society. All the contrary, philosophers are probably one of the ones that have more to say in the new societies on the employment of artificial technology, on the elements that have to do in which many professions will disappear, connected to transport and mobility, for example. An autonomous car, instead of, if you have an accident or if you have to make a decision, you have to crash two people. What do you choose? Where do you turn? Right, center, middle, where? Using the car. Those are problems that have to be solved with the new technologies that imply thinking, to enter complex problems, ethical problems related to humanity, and that has to do with education. And then the administration has a key role, because in 2035, which is very close, the 50% of all the labor task is going to change. That is, nobody is going to keep one. Every two jobs are going to be new, totally new, and the rest is going to disappear. On my point of view, that is going to be the biggest change that humanity is going to experience in its history. We are in front of the biggest change, and the public administration has to be aware of this, very aware that this is going to happen. And we have to anticipate to this change. Who is getting anticipated to this? The private sector, the private companies. Who? The American companies, the Chinese companies. With something very simple, China and the US are competing against artificial intelligence. The war Kuwait from the previous American period was clearly focused towards that path, because currently or nowadays, data are the 21st century peril. No, they are the fuel for artificial intelligence. The fuel for artificial intelligence. That is the definition, the best definition that we can provide about data. And China, with the amount of people they have, it's a data origin to generate artificial intelligence. The US too, because they have more knowledge on the software for intelligent artificial. But China is in front of this. What administration has to do? The public administration. What can they do? If you don't do it, somebody else will do it. So technology is an accelerator, and it's so important that anyone can understand it. As, for example, when the car arrived to New York, the first 4 cars, they were manufactured there in the Fifth Avenue, New York, next to Central Park, where all the horses were there. And so you could see the new cars. You have the car drivers and car manufacturers, the ones that did everything that the houses were doing, and they were there because they were losing their jobs. During this transition from the horses disappear up to the car arrived, and it took 30 or 40 years, more or less. How long is going to take between the artificial intelligence takes almost all our lives, because when we use it, the citizenship platform, when we talk with the airlines, with WhatsApp or any company, they already have a robot that answers. It's not a human that is answering. For example, when we looked in Google, it's artificial intelligence. How long is going to take between the artificial intelligence occupying all our economic activity? Well, very little time. This is going to happen in months, in 5 years, at the least, at the most, 3 years, depending on us, what we are able to do, of course. And the administration must advance into this, or the reality is going to face them. And we will see things like what we are saying, like there is a bigger gap between what is happening in society and what the administration is able to advance as regards this. This is like a dilemma. You have closed with a dilemma. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Juan Francisco? You finished your participation with a dilemma, something that makes us reflecting on. So welcome. Welcome and thank you for your time, Juan Francisco. Now, if someone has a question, someone in the room wants to ask a question, it is the moment right now for the panel members. If you don't have any question, I have some that I have written down, and I will take advantage of the situation to ask the questions so that the rest can think about new questions. Let's see whoever wants to answer the question. My question is the following. What do you think is the main obstacle as regards developing technological solutions of high impact in the territory? The regulatory stops, bad regulations from the local government, lack of coordination between academy, science, and the government, or lack of risk capital? I know that there might be components of all of them, but if someone can answer or give us or provide us some ideas on this, I would appreciate it.
If you let me go on, then I will. I think that, let's see, there are some things that are very important, and all of us here, we know this very clearly. There needs to be an impact between the private and public sector. And this should be agreed just as when the Industrial Revolution was agreed. We need a new social agreement. And that social agreement needs to put on the table all these things. It should be a social agreement from the point of view of where are we going here from now. As regards, for example, artificial intelligence, which is a subject and subject matter that I love. There's an organization that has been created among different technological entrepreneurs who want to put a brake on the development of artificial intelligence because they see it as a vehicle that advances at full speed and that it's only leading to an acceleration of all processes. So there should be also a balance that has a different impact if we think about mainly how human beings act. Because in different platforms we are seeing a growing reality that applies a lot of artificial intelligence. And we are seeing how these robots are taking over our lives, and it's something that everyone knows. So if we do not do this, as humanity has always done things, that is agreeing different situations, I don't think we are going to make any progress. As regards regulations, restrictions, in the case of Spain, no one will find them, or at least no one will find them in Finland or in Singapore. Because today, Internet, in spite some governments opposing it, has no frontiers. If there's a lack of good prioritizing at local governments, different national governments and supranational organizations of courts need to work on this. And of course, there's a lot of bureaucracy that needs to be eliminated. But some of this hasn't happened because of the pandemic. Is there a lack of coordination between companies? Yes, we need more coordination between government and companies. And lack of capital? Of course. The capital will go whenever it sees profitability, and we have that right here. For example, for sustainable development and ecological transitions, as well as green revolutions, there's a lot of capital available for that. But we need to create projects that are capable of development that available capital. Because we are interested also in build on that while taking into account the 25th conference and also taking care of our future. And there's a lot of money to do that. And that public and private collaboration will be essential and fundamental. Yes, there I would like to add, Juan Francisco, that, well, some of the experiences that I commented on in Amsterdam or other cities of these low-cost and fast pilots to test different projects, it's a very good way so that they can be escalated later on. That would be maybe not the case of making the biggest mega project, but starting with smaller solutions that are useful for people, which is something that you were also talking about. Rapid and efficient services for all. Just to be a little bit more polemic, as also Juan Francisco was, I don't want to question him, of course, but also to answer Gustavo. We also said 30 years ago that every one of us was going to be in the moon, and now none of us is in the moon. We were speaking about robots, and now we are not living among robots. I'm not undervaluating this But because of course there's a transformation going on, but what I think is that the big driver of digital transformation is citizenship. And I refer to what is going on in these recent times. In the last years and months, because of the pandemic, citizens have gotten used to many things in the digital world, not only part of the digital transformation, but something that many of us wouldn't have thought about 15 months ago. And as administration, as a public administration, I think that we need, if we have digital transformation as our number one priority in our public agenda, is because we feel that pressure from citizenship that we wouldn't have felt 2 or 3 years ago. As silly example is that in many aspects we understood that you needed to make these different public services. You had to take a whole morning to do paperwork and stuff. Now that doesn't happen anymore, and citizens don't like that. They are asking administration, and I don't know if this is yet about the difference between telematic aspects and digital tools. It's not only about entering data, but us generating data in a digital way is not the same as filling queries and forms. But we are missing the part of generating data from that. Everyone has spoken about the importance of data, and that is something where governments have a great role in making the citizenship aware about the risks of this data, because it's quite dangerous to send our ID through WhatsApp to a friend to perform some paperwork or to whatever we need. And of course, accepting cookies every time we enter any site. And I am not an anti-Amazon person, but we have no issue accepting our data to be used, but after, the administration has some difficulty. I don't know if it's restrictions or self-restrictions that we have, because the citizenship doesn't like us to have the data as much. The big role that we have ahead of us, together with a collaboration between the public and private sector, is making citizens understand that the property of information is theirs. And us, as an administration or as companies, we just take that information, but the information is theirs. My banking data, it's not the bank's property, it's mine. My statement for taxes is not for the tax revenue institution, it's mine. It's mine, and I can choose who to share that with. So we are still in that phase of thinking that the property of data is ours, and that we generate that data with different systems, and we see that the empowerment of citizens in what is represented by data and how that is changing and changing the relationship that we have within the administration and also with the private sector. It's not one of the obstacles, but it's one of the challenges that we have to truly understand digitalization. And referring to one of your first questions or challenging statements is also to understand better or minimize the risks of that digital inequality. And of course, there are many other approaches, but I will focus actually in that change of mindset as regards data. Perfect, lady. Thank you very much. Juan, you also wanted to say something? Can you hear me, Ike? Sorry. Can you hear me? You wanted to say something?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Sorry. Just short delay.
Go ahead.
I think one of the main points that just has been introduced, that it's about sovereignty, that you at least are able to think about the decisions you'd like to make and actually be able to do so. And of course, connected world, that's really hard to do so. But no, we're not on the moon yet, every one of us. But in just a few years, everyone is using the same digital tools. We're using Zoom, and there wasn't an alternative. So that goes pretty rapidly. So when you're talking about the question, is it about regulation? Is it about funds? And of course, yes, it's about everything, but it's also about what role can we take? And I think that's about the political aspect that we state. We do want sovereignty. Digital is not only just a thing, it's how we live together. It's about the quality of life, etc. And it's also about how do you finance alternative solutions. So maybe we can become lead buyers as local governments or countries, to make sure that you've got an alternative for WhatsApp. So it's not about that being against Amazon or so. It's about being able to choose and being able to shift. One example we're facing in Amsterdam is that some companies like Google do know more about the quality of our streets than we do, because the Google scan cars are driving around. Do we invest a few million a year to drive around and gathering the data ourselves? It's a budget we're not used to spend, so it's a new thing. So I think when it's about two things, we can have the political perspective of sovereignty, making sure that you want to choose. The other one is making sure the digital is not free, and the tools you use are not free. So you have to invest as government as well to create that data and not depend on organizations. We can just pull the plug, and there are a lot of cities worldwide. We just stop moving when it comes to mobility or all kind of other sectors when some companies pull the plug, and that scares me. And I think that's an important thing to solve.
Gracias, Ike. Muchas
And I
gracias.
think Marcelo has the answer.
Thank you, Ike.
Has an answer.
Sí, le doy la palabra a Marcelo.
I will give the floor to Marcelo, who also raised his hands, and one of the participants. The floor is yours, Marcelo.
Estás muteada, Sara. No te
Oh,
escuchamos.
Sarah, your microphone is muted. We cannot hear you.
No. No te
Ahí
escuchamos, Sara.
¿Ahora
Gustavo,
escucháis?
Ahí sí. Ahí sí. Muchas
Okay,
gracias.
now we can hear you.
Em,
Thank you very
bueno,
much.
yo
Well,
en realidad ya
actually,
Leira, tomó el punto que iba a
Leila
decir.
already
Yo creo
touched
que
what I
el
wanted to
tema
speak
de
about,
hoy, una
but
participante en otra
the
sesión
theme that we have
dijo,
today
la
in a different
infraestructura
session
digital es
was
como el
addressed
tren
by
del siglo
another
XIX.
participant, saying
Cuando
that
decimos trenes en
digital transformation
Argentina,
is like a 19th century
conectábamos
train.
el territorio y ahora
We
tenemos
used
que
to connect the
conectar todo el
territory with
territorio otra vez.
trains, and now we
Y
need
eso es
to
un buen
reconnect the
comparativo
territory all
también
over
porque
again,
yo
which is
creo
a
que en
good
los ejemplos
comparison,
en
because
particular de
I
Ámsterdam
think in
se
the
ve que si
particular
ese
case of
tren es hecho
Amsterdam,
por un
if
privado
that
y es
train
una
is built
política
by a private company
privatizada
and
que
it's
dice
a
yo tengo un tren, te lo
private
vendo y
policy,
vamos,
I say,
obviamente
I have this
todos
train,
nos
I'll
podemos
sell it to
imaginar
you, and we
cómo
move forward.
irían esos trenes
So we need to
y lo podemos
imagine
vivir.
how
Yo
these
hablo aquí
trains
desde CGLU, de
will work
España,
with the
y lo hemos
territory,
vivido, por
and
ejemplo,
I'm speaking about the
tren y
point of view of
en
UCGL,
Europa, que cuando es muy privatizado,
because in
el
cases
desarrollo
where
del
there was
territorio
a
que
lot of
sigue es
privatization,
completamente exclusivo.
then the
Entonces,
territory
me
becomes
parece que esa
exclusive.
parte
So I
de
think
tener
that part
atención en
of
la
paying a lot of
política
attention
con
to
una
policy with a
perspectiva pública
perspective,
es la
with a
clave.
public
Creo que ahí
perspective,
Ike
is
y
actually
Leira
key.
en
And that is what each of you also mentioned, Leira, on the part of infrastructure and data use for protection of data, is two things that are very closely related. And that's when we have to make emphasis on. So I wanted to make a question to the speakers as regards this, because we also have a workshop on this subject in Amsterdam, which was very inspiring. And it can be inspiring for different Uruguayan and Argentinian cities. It's actually interesting to think about this in this way, because the key is to link the different perspectives in one policy. So my question would be, what would be the pieces that are the learning pieces and lessons that we can take from different actors and different regions from this debate? Thank you, Sara, for these ideas. I totally agree that the thing is about cooperating and not reinventing everything, to understand and learn from what is being done in different places. Marcelo, can you hear me? Do you want to take the floor? Yes, I just wanted to make a little small contribution. It's about our experience working with different governments in Latin America. Some of them have digital transformation as their #1 priority, and some others as their second, third, or fourth priority. It's a very heterogeneous field in the first place, and in some cities as Amsterdam, others in Spain, or in Latin America, such as Córdoba, they already have digital transformation as an axis of their policy, and they are making every effort to enable and to start using this technology and regulatory framework. But there's also a whole universe of cities that are not making the first steps in this direction. So I think there's a controversy in agendas in different local governments. Technology is an agenda that we need to manage apart from others. It's an instrument to impulse, to give and boost change, but it's an additional agenda. And digital transformation and digital innovation is a tool for change. And it's not something that is widely disseminated in different local governments in the region. So that's why we needed to show different solutions that are low cost, so as to show people how these new methodologies and technologies can enable different changes and generate a different impact. And it's also possible to escalate this, which of course is not as easy as it seems. And there's also a lot of risk capital. And in this case, I praise our colleagues in Córdoba for advancing in this sense and also to address this need. And I also wanted to mention, in relation with this challenge to escalate solutions, which has to do with sometimes being able to enabling national solutions that are in a weak situation, because cities depend on central governments to make investments. So they also depend on the agenda of the national government. And sometimes the topic of digital transformation is subject to different debates in the national agenda. So it's something that we need to discuss. It's pretty important to have economic development dealt in national agendas. So that was it. Thank you very much. I also wanted to add something to what Marcelo just said as regards the organization of agendas, and I will be pretty honest about this. Also thinking about what Juan Francisco said, digitalization and technology are cross-sectional themes. And public administration do manage this in quite the wrong way. And let us not speak about the different niches and the 2030 agenda. I agree that, as Sara just asked, one of the good experiences in how other governments address digitalization or technological approaches is something that we also have a lot of issues with. We have not solved this yet. I myself have spoken about the different budgets that we are managing, and we still have a hard time seeing in different aspects like the education of digitalization. Circular economy is also related with digitalization. And the country's digitalization is something that we are not seeing. We did actually have some initiatives in this sense, but honestly, most of these initiatives do not belong to our area. But each of us will be deploying these stacks, and even from the local levels or cities, we are lacking some mechanisms in order to be able to apply these. So there are a lot of cross-sectional capacities that need to be deployed, and it's very hard to manage at the local level. So what we need to do is to prioritize, as Gustavo also said, that the priorities are so many and surprises that it's very hard to bring them all to the table. There's also a lack of management for these agendas. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here. I'm ready now. I agree, and I also thank Larry on behalf of everyone. I take the challenge of being the voice of everyone and her honesty about sharing this. I agree with her 100%. I won't repeat what I already said, but when we analyze what is the level of digital level transformation in the world in general, in economic activities, we see that the financial sector is the one going ahead of everyone else. Of course, we would say it's easier for them, but from the financial sector, we see that each subsector, it's very different. A bank such as BBVA generating an application than banks that only produce saving accounts, which are just starting with electronic transactions. So in spite of this, in each sector, in each economic activity, there's a lot, and there are big differences. In the agricultural sector, for example, there's at least a 5% need to start this digital transformation, not understood as a politician does or as a company owner does, because they don't even know what this is about. They know nothing about the subject, which is a different discussion, of course, which is the generational replacement of people in administration who do not make a natural use of technology, following different processes to reach an aim. But of course, they still have to internalize how this process is changing, such as digital changes. So data is being digitalized, aims and goals are being digitalized, and the change is transparent, and it can be revolutionary because administration has different basic items. First, how public officers are being recycled. They need to be retrained for digital transformation. We cannot ask them to make changes if they are not trained to be agents of change. We still in Spain have different interventions that are not being made for the different skills in order to make and perform their new roles much better, not as we used to do in the 19th century. And of course, the corporative resistance to this is actually quite significant. Interventions in public administration are the ones that opposed the most to these changes because they are saving. They think that they have to know how the way to do this is. It's not as easy for a public officers than for interventions. And of course, one example that can make us all think about this is the region of European funds for recovery, for the recovery plan in Europe. It will manage the recovery in public administration in South countries, such as Italy, Spain, Portugal, which will be the main beneficiaries of this fund. And in the last 5 years, Spain has stopped managing 60% of European funds that we had to give back to Europe because we weren't able to manage them, which also indicates that the funds that will be coming, that we will be receiving, which are 40,000 million euros to be spent before 2025, already means that either the public administration changes that or other governments that are supporting the countries that were affected by the pandemic won't be able to spend that money because of the amount of people who have suffered unemployment. And this is because the public administration is not capable of doing things. It's something that has become fundamental, crucial, I would say even essential for the development of our society. Excellent. Thank you, Juanfran. You had something else to say?
Yes, I was triggered by the point Jean made, and I think the recovery funds are a great opportunity to address these topics. And I think, yes, of course, Italy was one of the beneficiary countries, but I think let's work on an example alternative solutions European-wide. I introduced this Cities Coalition for Digital Rights, and a lot of cities from Estonia to the Czech well, a lot of cities, Milan, Barcelona, I'm thinking of cities, not in countries, Milan, Barcelona, Belgrado, a lot of cities are involved in how can we work together on digital inclusion or alternative technology or sovereignty and infrastructure. And I think these funds are a great opportunity to work together. But it's really hard to take the lead from city perspective. Most of the times it's academics giving a solution and we just sign and say, okay, let's contribute. So that also takes time and to invest to work on this together. So anyone involved in these kind of projects within this call, please be invited to join a few cities who would like to work on this more together. Saying, yes, it's about European recovery funds, but most projects, of course, can be addressed worldwide. So it doesn't matter if you're from Argentina or Italy. That said, I think the offer that the point John made, I think we should be more active together on a more global level.
Genial, Ike. Gracias, gracias por compartir esos links.
Thank you, Ike, for sharing those links. We already shared them in the chat, so excellent. We are just right on time. So we agreed with Paula that we could use 2 minutes by each speaker in order to make a closing. So 2 minutes for Leire, Marcelo, Juan, Francisco, and we will close the activity. Leire, if you agree.
Do you agree later? Yes, perhaps. I'm not going to be very organized. No, your debate was excellent, perfect. I loved it. Of course, we will have more debates. And from what it was said, I have some ideas that are important, and I have to express myself. From Juan Francisco's comment about China and the US and the advance it has in everything that has to do with artificial intelligence, of course, it's like that, but I want to talk in favor of Europe. Perhaps we are a little bit late, but I think Europe has, and in fact, they are making a lot of efforts. They must have their own model. I don't like the American model. I don't like the Chinese model. Today we talked about inequality, we talk about rights. I think Europe and any other topics, of course, we have to improve them, like human rights, no wars, peace. I think it is a model in which we have to feel identified with and we have to defend. So I have hope that perhaps a little bit late, but later than the US and China, but I believe that Europe will have its own model. And then to wrap up, regarding the transformations in the digital sector, we're worried about, or at least I think it's important, the access, the technological adoption, the demand and the offer go in the same rhythm. It doesn't mean that they should go slowly, but if the offer is advancing faster, if there is no demand, there will be no offer, and the other way around, it goes the same way. So there are two processes that are the retrofit, and in the public sector, we can also refer to the offer and the demand. So we must try to do it in a slow rhythm or to have a balance among offer and demand. Because we may want to escalate, as Marcelo said, and to do it very fast, even with very small pilot projects, but if they are not going in the same rhythm, so it could be a risk or a failure. That's all. Thank you very much, Gustavo. Thank you, Lever. Thank you for your time and your ideas. Marcelo? Before, I want to say something. I want to thank everybody because I really feel emotional to participate in debate spaces like this one. I leave this space very inspired and continue working in Kafka and this agenda in Latin America. I just want to give you 3 messages. I think that we all agree there is no way back. Here we are debating the obstacles to advance. And the decision on the digital and the data use and new technologies for the local development is a fact. But we have to convince some governments about the benefits and as regards the digital transformation agenda. And I think spaces like this and all the knowledge and spread of knowledge can be good tools, apart from the small, low-cost innovations that help convince people that technology is not making it complicated. Sometimes it's to make it simple in a better way, and that is also called innovation. And finally, I think we still have some space, some high demand on the construction of digital strategies in the region level. Even though some big places have that transformation somewhat structured, they still have more space. And we have to devote effort, and that is not a specific topic for the development countries, We have to think on how to deploy those strategies. And to tell you that we are available for that knowledge interchange and to collaborate with several projects. Again, thank you very much, and I greet everyone. Excellent, Marcelo. Thank you very much for participating, and your insight is always complementary for the insights. Ike, are you there? We can listen to you on for 2 minutes to close this debate. Ike.
To close the debate, I think it's good to you can hear me, right? There's an echo. So yeah, so sorry, the echo was there. When there's a continuous echo, it's no problem. to closing remarks, I think what I started with was the bottom line, the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. I think we should never forget and work on those topics, access to internet. And I'm really happy that the discussion evolved towards, okay, can we, what are the obstacles for taking a leap forward? Or what kind of cities do we want to be? We still have to work on the bottom line, access to internet, access to knowledge, etc. And everyone has to fix themselves. But the second part, and that's what most of my days and most of my work is about, it's about innovation and how can we take the next step. And that's where topics like the recovery funds come in. How do we work together on not working on the basic level, but how do we want it? How can we shape the cities we'd like to have? And I'd like to give you one example. We've got a Dutch site where if you want to buy a house, you always go to this website. It's called Funda in Dutch. Everyone starts looking at a castle or at a large house. But if you ask people where they want to live, they always buy in between a middle house. I'm not rich, this is just a house like I've got. But when you start looking, you always look at the pictures of the places you really want to work. How do we start a conversation like this? Everyone is already leveling on agreements, etc. So how do you capture the dreams? One experiment or thing we're working on in Amsterdam is what the website did. They did an eye tracking on your eyes, and everyone who was searching for houses. What are the things you'd like from this castle? People liked a large living room, or large windows, or green outside of your balcony. The same system, the same technique we used to design, we're starting on to design neighborhoods. So if you use interaction with people in the streets or new ways of retrieving data, you get new insights on what people truly want. And I think for me, it was an eye opener because you always have something in between. People always think about reason or what's possible, etc. But knowing what people really want, then you got a different kind of discussion. And then I think that's the third part we need in this conversation. And that's where institutions like EIT or other innovation units come in. I do think that digital rights, bottom lines, are really important, but we should start also with dreaming. And this website captured the dreams of what houses people wanted to buy. They used this data of millions of people looking at these photos, and they actually built, if you want to look at it, it's in English, Funda house, it's called. They designed a house based on that data, and it's impressive. It's a house you want to live in. So what if we do that with neighborhoods and our city? And I think we can do that as cities ourselves. So I'm talking with a lot of people about digital twins and all kind of new 5G, etc. But we took the fun out of it. And it's important that we use those dreams, capture those dreams, and from that perspective, we start building. And then we take in account that what Lyra, Marcelo, and others said, the way we do it, that's about sovereignty. That's about giving people power over their own data, etc. And I think that's the, the conclusions. I think that those are important to make. Bottom line, digital rights, but design from dreams. And I think that's possible.
Gracias, Ike. Gracias, Sara.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insights from Amsterdam. I think
we need to amplify and widen the information with the links that you shared with us. Francisco, you have 2 more minutes for the closing, and we'll be very strict about this. The floor is yours now. Well, thank you. I share many of the things you already said, especially the last thing that about empowering the citizenship. But of course, that can also be a dream that it's very difficult to make come true because there are many people ahead of us. So I also agree with the European model, but Europe is going too slow and it needs to reach local governments and be closer to citizens. In any case, the administration and whatever companies also do, they both need to make and apply non-invasive policies, policies that do not harm the citizen and that are not either paternalizing, which is also a tendency of these organizations, like citizens are dumb people. Of course, that's not the case. I think without doubt that the permanent help of the government is also like a spark that fires rockets, but of course rockets cannot land anywhere, and we need to build the launching station to direct our efforts. It's also necessary to agree on how we are going to develop public development. And both for public and private investors, they all need social actors and partners. That's where you can build public policies for the local level. You were saying about designing houses. We can also design cities. Amsterdam is actually quite different from many other cities in the world because urban planners have designed a city that was that was thought actually for people, for the future. This is essentially this work that we need to carry out. And of course, for companies and for public sectors, they have to do and they have to build different business opportunities linked with the Sustainable Development Goals. I say this because the SDGs have joined more than 120 and there are 192 countries in the world. And it's an experience of an excellent international best practice because it's giving way to a lot of policies that are being started at public level. And of course, companies and administration should also contribute with means to cooperate because, of course, just human resources, technological resources are needed. The more development there is, the more business there will be, and companies will need to have a more social approach, and that will be good for everyone. I agree with what you say, Francisco. That's excellent. So we will close now this activity. It was honestly a pleasure to meet you all, and I hope we keep in touch through social media, through email. I loved this exchange of ideas. So I want to thank each of the 4 speakers. Paula, for coordinating previously in such an impeccable manner this activity. I want to thank the organizers, and we will be seeing each other in different spaces, maybe virtual spaces or hopefully in person. Thank you, Sara, to you as well. Thank you, Paula, and well, thank you, everyone.